Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Tuesdays with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. And now your host, Brian Tally.
Welcome back to Tuesdays with Tally podcast, where we add real life value to the lives of everyday people. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Folks, today we celebrate day 117 of this brand new podcast. And today is going to be episode 82 episodes in 117 days, folks, and our guests have been phenomenal. I've been extremely blessed to be connected with so many great men and women that our country has to offer to give you everything you need to live the life that you were intended to live. Now, I'm a business owner out there. What can I do to help you advertise your business and take it to the next level? Well, contact me. Let's sit down, have a conversation. Let's put a marketing plan together, and let's develop a strategy to take your business next level. Now, I've got to thank today's show sponsors, Chris Whittemore, United States Marine Corps veteran and Scout Sniper. He's recently written a book, and I came across it. And I tell you, you got to go out and you got to get this book today, Terror to Triumph. It's available everywhere books are sold online. And it is a very, very unique read. It is based on a true story about the Battle of Ramadi, as seen through the lenses of Chris himself as a Marine Scout Sniper. Get it today, Terror to Triumph. Again, everywhere books are sold online. It is available. Just do a quick Google search, Terror to Triumph by Chris Whittemore, and it will pop up. This awesome book will make for a great Christmas gift, and you will be supporting a great American and a U.S. Marine veteran. Folks, we have a very special guest today joining us on today's program. Bruce Stewart is the executive director for the Stronger Alliance, the pastor for Reflective Life Media, a chaplain for Montgomery County Precinct 3 Constable's Office, and he's on the first responder team for Montgomery County Behavioral Health and Suicide Taskforce. Bruce serves an extremely vulnerable population, and he is there as a symbol of strength and hope. Bruce is currently serving on the advisory boards and councils for CareForce, Honor Up, Cassidy Joined for Hope, the Salvation Army of Montgomery County, and also helps Irish Angel and Veterans for You. Bruce is a tremendous, selfless servant and an honorable staple in the community every single day. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Bruce Stewart. How are you, sir?
Good, brother. How are you?
Sorry about that. I was tripping over some of them words. There's so many different groups, and it doesn't really come off naturally off the tip of someone's tongue when they're just saying group after group after group after group. But you are heavily involved. You are a professional volunteer and a professional selfless servant. I must say, you do a great job in the community.
I appreciate you saying that, mate. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Hey, you got to give credit where it's due, and you are always out. You have so much energy. I mean, you are everywhere. You are like the wind in this county. Describe just what it's like in the day of Bruce.
You know what's great about that is I never know because every day can be so different depending on what's going on. So like this morning we had a fundraiser for Safe Harbor. Obviously I'm doing this now. This afternoon, I'm going to be helping one of our deputies whose mom is struggling with cancer. And then, and then it could be another veteran after that. So, I mean, anything can happen on any given day. And that's why I love what I do, because it's never the same. it's always different, but it's always good, and I get to work with amazing people. So I think that's the best part is I get to work with amazing people and help people in their darkest times.
Now, I notice a little accent from you, and it doesn't quite sound like a Texan accent. Can you describe a little bit about where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from deep South Texas. You just keep going till you hit the kangaroos. Yeah, in Melbourne, Australia. It's just another part of Texas, really. I mean,
you just keep going until you see the kangaroos. I like that.
Yeah. So now I've been out here 16 years now, and so I like to mess with people because when I say hello, I say "G'day, y'all." So they, I've got the Aussie and the Texan there. So
Yeah, you guys say mate too, right? Hey, mate.
All the time. I do. Mm-hmm. Hey, mate. And you know what's great about that is, like you, we meet a lot of people and we don't always remember their name. And so it's a great cop-out. Hey, mate, how you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like saying brother.
Yeah, right?
If you forgot their name, you can always just call them brother.
Hey, brother. You can always call them brother. You can always call them mate.
So yeah. What was life like growing up in Australia as a kid?
It was great. I've got amazing parents to this day. They're still my heroes. I have two brothers that we're very close. They're still my best friends. I'm the eldest, and the other one's 1.5 years younger, and then another's 10 years younger. But we're all very close. And Australia is a lot like the US. A lot of freedom, able to do a lot of things. Obviously, that all changed during COVID over there. But growing up, it was fantastic, And my parents are servants. They've been with the same Salvation Army for nearly just over 50 years this year, actually. So wow. They've always served. They've always worked. And so that was installed in all three of us to give back to the community because that's how they were and still are.
So you would end up, going through all your childhood and your high school years in Australia, and then you would become an adult, post high school. What did you then do as an adult in Australia before making the move to Texas 16 years ago?
Yeah, I was a teacher. So I taught everything. I taught high school. I taught your equivalent of elementary. I taught people at risk. I worked with special needs kids. So I taught sport because I have a sporting background, although to look at me today, you wouldn't know it. But I was a teacher, obviously involved in ministry, but my paid job was teaching before we moved.
So was life okay as an adult in Australia? What brought you to Texas?
So we felt called by God to plant a church. And which is really scary when you don't know anyone over here. My wife is originally from Houston. We met in Australia, and we lived there after we got married. And during that time, we just felt called to plant a church, and that's an amazing story that for another time. But we came here and we did just that, and then we planted another church up here in spring, and then. And that's when I was leading that. And then I got asked to lead the Stronger Alliance and pastor Reflective Life Media, which I still do to this day. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
Excellent. So describe the differences of living here in the Houston metro area to Australia.
Oh, wow. I think, it depends on where you're living. Let me explain that. Where I grew up, kind of like living in the suburbs of Houston, right? Melbourne's a huge city, voted most livable city in the world, probably 8 of the last 10 years. So it is a great city. But when it comes to things of faith, when it comes to patriotism and those type of things, Montgomery County, there is no better place. You can talk about your faith here. You can talk about how much you love the US, and obviously I do. And it's accepted. If I was to do that in Australia, I had people telling me to F off or, not to curse or anything, but they would tell me where to go and how to get there pretty quickly. So you have to choose your words carefully. You have to, it's just a little bit different. as far as sharing faith. Now, everything else, no, it was pretty good. It was great.
Are there not Christians or any churches in Australia? I don't understand.
I mean, there is churches, but there's a lot more who aren't Christians. So I find here, like, you pray before an event. If you have a fundraiser, people pray. You even political events or even in the courts, they pray. That never happens in Australia. Very rarely would that ever happen, because this is such a mixed bag of religions and beliefs and faiths and everything else that it's frowned upon. They don't think that it's appropriate. So it's a very different mindset.
How would you explain the experience that you have had for the last 16 years living here in the United States?
I absolutely love it, because I've had opportunities that I never thought, as a boy growing up in the suburbs in Australia, I never thought I would be doing the things I'm doing. Like, who would have thought that I'm involved with a movie? I had no interest in being a part of a kind of cast and crew or movie. It just wasn't even on my radar. And now our movie, We Are Stronger, is at 8 million views and being translated into different languages, and it's helping people all over the world. And, we have a new series called Breaking Strongholds, which is on YouTube. That's an experience I never expected. I never expected to be working in law enforcement and with crisis intervention and suicide prevention. I mean, the opportunities here, if you're willing to work hard, put yourself out there, be a little bit vulnerable, and I think, of course, do what you say you're going to do, is incredible. America is such, we talk about it being a land of opportunity, but it is so true. It really is. If you, and for me personally, I came with the mindset that this is my home now, and I'm going to make it the best home I can. My kids are going to be raised here, which they are. They were born and raised here, so they don't know anything but Texas. Mm-hmm. And so I think from that perspective, you want to give back to the community, and particularly for me, law enforcement, veterans, I know I get to do the things with my family, the people I love, go to my church and worship, go to watch the Astros play, or whatever it is that I want to do. I can do that because of our military, because of our law enforcement and our first responders. So I'm very grateful for this nation. I'm an American as well. And I'm really proud to say that. Like, that means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you here.
I appreciate that. kind of too late now. You're stuck with me.
So, you have a very important role in this community, and you do serve an at-risk and vulnerable population. Now, you are one of the chaplains, or the chaplain for the Montgomery County Precinct 3 Constables. Describe what the mission of a chaplain is with Precinct 3.
Yeah. Okay. So my role is quite varied. And let me say this firstly. I am not your typical chaplain, and I mean that in a good way. I have such a supportive command staff, particularly Constable Ryan Gable, who allows me to do the things that are going to benefit not only our department, but the community. So obviously that has a lot to do with the way I operate. My initial role, and the reason I came on, was I saw a gap on our law enforcement. Were going out to these scenes, dealing with this trauma, seeing the worst of society. Nobody calls law enforcement and says, "Hey, I'm having a party. Would you like to come?" Right? I mean, every time 911's called and they ask law enforcement, it's usually because something pretty bad's happened. And so what I was seeing was these guys and these women are getting trauma every single day. They don't get time off, as far as, they're not, it's not like deployment where you go for 6 months and then you got a few months off and then you go to deployment. They face whatever they face during that day, take off their uniform, and the next morning they're back and they're doing the same thing. So I saw a real need where the trauma and the experience of what they deal with really affected our officers. And I was like, well, who's helping them? Who's ministering to them? And so that was my initial role as the chaplain, is to come and help them. And then it's expanded so much. So I've advocated for them, everything from the kind of training they get to what resources are available for them, as far as mental health, behavioral health, even financial, what resources are available for their family. How do we protect them? How do we encourage them? And then also advocating for the constable's office in the community and doing service work, representing the constable and sometimes speaking on behalf of the constable. And so I do that as well. And then, of course, you have the scenes where you have, a family who's, had a member die, and they're traumatized. That, it's usually not expected if you're calling the police. And so I'll go out on scene and I will help our officers or our deputies control the scene by taking care of the family and making sure they know what is going on. They know, all right, they've got somebody who's going to advocate for them and make sure they're okay, while investigations are going on and that type of thing. And so that's part of my role as well. And then I mean, there's community events that we do and advocating for them with legislation as well. I've done that. Getting like when COVID hit, we didn't have protective gear and all that sort of stuff, and I was able to get that done as well. And then like when Hurricane Harvey hit, providing for the community water and distributing food and all that type of thing. So and checking on our officers to make sure they're okay, because their house is flooded too. So I mean, there's many aspects to it. And then of course we have our administration staff who also go through things, and the families who have also gone through things. Unfortunately, I've responded to 5 different occasions where officers have been shot. Some have been killed, and so I'm often the first or one of the first on scene to deal with that. So, these families go through a lot. They go through a lot.
Now, you do a lot of work as a crisis interventionist, to, let's face it, to talk to people that are going through probably their worst day of their life, whether they're on a bridge, whether they've got a gun in their hand, whether they're suicidal or homicidal. How do you communicate and reach people that don't necessarily want to be reached? How do you effectively communicate with these folks that are going through a crisis moment, to have them get off that bridge, to have them put down that gun, if you will?
Yeah, there are different ways. So firstly, I am trained in ASSIST, which is what they teach the people on the suicide hotline. And CareForce is the nonprofit that teaches that. And so I'm on their board. And so what happens often is people will reach out to me. They know somebody's suicidal, or a child or an adult has expressed, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. They're not sure what to do because that's not their field of expertise. And so they will call me, and I will either go to the person. If they live locally, and when I say locally, within the Houston Metroplex area, Montgomery County, all the way up to wherever. I mean, I've had to, thought I had to go to Dallas one day. Depending on what the situation is, I will try to go to be there with them initially, because I think a face-to-face is always better than a phone call. And if I can't get to them physically for whatever reason, they don't want to give up location or whatever, then I'll speak to them on the phone. And so far I've been blessed. I haven't lost anybody. I've been able to talk people down when they are suicidal. And you have situations, like you said, where people have guns and that. And I try to appeal to them depending on their situation. So, for example, I've had a mother who had a gun, and I'm like, look, is this what you want your kids to see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you think that's going to affect them? So why don't we put that down and let's talk? You know, and then again, it depends on the situation, how well I know the people. If it's people I don't know, no, I'm probably not going to get involved if there's a gun involved. You know, I'm going to leave that to the law enforcement professionals, obviously. So it just depends on the situation, but often it's people reaching out to me. People know this is what I do, and so, you know, I have people, I don't know how to help it. I've had people as far as California, they contact me and go, hey, we got your name from somewhere, and, you know, I'm suicidal. And they're often in law enforcement or they're often military. And I think fortunately I've built a fairly good reputation of being confidential, which is really important. Knowing that they can trust me, knowing it's not going to go any further. I mean, as you've heard, I haven't mentioned any names and I won't. And being able to talk to them and relate to them, and you know, that's really important. My boss, Constable Ryan Gable, he's been great even with our own department. He knows that I'm going to do my best to make sure our people are okay. So he's never going to question, you know, tell me what you need, you know, tell me everything. Like, he's never going to do that. He's going to allow me to be me, and to keep that confidence so that he knows that his people are being supported, and people in the community are being supported. So,
folks, we're being joined by Bruce Stewart, the chaplain for the Montgomery County Constable's Office, Precinct 3 in Montgomery County, Texas. Now, folks, just to paint you a picture, Montgomery County is directly north of Harris County and is a part of the Houston metro area. Just so you know exactly the county and, you know, the geographic location of where we are, because this next question will definitely matter, because I wanted to ask you, in Montgomery County, now a county just north of Houston, is there a mental health crisis going on in Montgomery County?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So most people don't know youth suicide in Montgomery County and even in Texas is the second leading cause of death for youth between the ages of 10 and 25. So it's a huge problem.
Did you say that's the number
two? Number two cause of death is suicide. Number one is accidents. Number two is suicide. So yes, do we have a problem? Absolutely. If you didn't include COVID and pre-COVID, more first responders died by suicide than in the line of duty death. So do we have a problem? Absolutely. A problem that's been ignored. I mean, we know with the military, it's 22, 23 a day, and that's only the ones that they actually record and put down. But there are many that go unreported. And same in law enforcement. You know, they don't want to talk about it in some areas. You know, we're fortunately, again, we live in a county that does care about it. And we have great people like Eric Seacrest, and Sean Simmons and others, Ken Schleitner, who lead our first responder task force, which was set up to actually help first responders in Montgomery County with behavioral health and suicide, so that those on the front lines and dispatch are getting help, you know, because we have firefighters, law enforcement, dispatch, you know, ambulance drivers, and that work in the hospital districts that all face trauma every day, you know. And dispatches are actually one that's often forgotten. So during Hurricane Harvey, literally the dispatcher would be on the line and they had people that would call in and say, I'm in the attic, I'm stuck, we're drowning. And the next thing you know, the phone's hung up. And unfortunately for those dispatchers, those people do die, but they don't know that because the phone goes dead and they've got to move on to the next call. So you can imagine how traumatizing it is to hear somebody screaming, going, I can't swim. And then the next thing you know, the phone dies and you probably know what's happened to them, but you've got no way of knowing. So there is obviously a lot of trauma, and it's a huge issue. Because even today we saw in Garland, a lieutenant, 16 years on the job, and he unfortunately took his own life. So, yeah, it's a huge problem.
And see, like, as a guy from the outside looking in, I wouldn't have guessed that Montgomery County would be in a mental health crisis, just because, I mean, Montgomery County is the home of the Woodlands, Texas, and that has been voted one of the best places to live in America. I think maybe even number one right now. It's a very fast-growing county. It's the home of Conroe, Texas, which is a booming city and suburb in its own right. Now, the people are great here. There are lots of churches. There's a lot of great outreach. I mean, it's a very tight-knit community. Why is youth suicide so high in Montgomery County? That just doesn't make any sense to me. What's going on? Is there something underlying that folks like me that are completely just lost in?
Yeah. So let me clarify something, because this is a misconception. Money, social status, where you live has absolutely no bearing on suicide rates. It doesn't matter. You can be rich, poor. It really doesn't matter. They say the number one reason for youth suicide is family breakup. Number one cause. And we see that often. And then, of course, relationships. So boyfriend leaves girlfriend, girlfriend leaves boyfriend. Well, nobody's going to love me the same, and they take their life. And then, of course, there's school pressures. Pressures from school. I know even for my own son, I mean, he's mentally healthy, but it's because I'm drilling it into him. He needs to do self-care. There's just so much time. I mean, he's up at 5, he's out the door at 6. He gets home most nights because he's in band at 6:37, and then he's back at school sometimes on Saturdays. If they've got competition, he was back at 2:30 in the morning. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I've got 3 or 4 jobs and I don't work as hard as he does. And so there's a lot of pressure on kids that we may not think is pressure, because we all went through high school and we've all, that's just what you do. But it can be pretty tough. The world can be fairly brutal, and as we know, kids can be brutal. And bullying's still a thing. But honestly, bullying isn't the number one thing. The other thing we need to think about, and it does play a role, is social media. When we were kids, if you had a problem, you would go home from school and that'd be it, because you weren't on social media. Well, now someone can post something about another child and it's on there 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so that child doesn't get any respite from it, doesn't get any break from that. And so that's always out there. That pressure is always there. And whatever's being said is always out there for the whole world to see. So there's many issues, but the number one is relationship breakdown in the families.
I couldn't imagine being a kid right now. It's tough. Like you said, there's a lot of pressures, and I've got 2 kids that are in school now. One's in high school, one's in middle school. The other 2 are out and graduated from college and have moved on to their adult world. But there is a lot of pressure that's put on today's kids. Let's face it, back when I played sports, it was Little League, it was Pop Warner, it wasn't like a business like how it is today. Like they have everything is so competitive. Like that's it. It's like perfection and excellence and working hard. I mean, kids do actually just are thriving and excelling, but there's a lot of pressure that's put on them. And a lot of the pressure is put on by the child themselves to not want to fail and to succeed. And one of those, like you said, social media. I couldn't imagine being a kid and have somebody berate me or talk about rumors or whatever, and all of a sudden you're putting lies out there to hurt somebody, and that doesn't go away. And you show up the next day at school or whatever, and people are poking fun at you, they're staring at you, they're pointing at you. I mean, I could see how that could be a major problem to a child's mental health, especially if they're being bullied, like I said, online. Because a lot of these people are, won't do it to their face or whatever, because they would rather go online to do this because they feel that it's, they're not going to get a direct reaction from the student that they're actually picking on. But does social media have a large role to play right now in say teen suicide?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the leading cause, but it definitely plays a role. Let me explain that a little bit. So it's not just bullying. A big thing with that, and you mentioned it, is comparison, right? So, for example, Joe Bloggs, who lives down the road, he's a baseball player and he's being looked at scouts, and then you've got Miss Betty, who is beautiful and all the boys like her, and then why aren't I as pretty, and and your worth starts to become wrapped up in how many likes you get on social media, and am I as good as the next person, and your identity, especially as a youth, you're still trying to figure out who you are. And then you have these other people that look like they got their lives all together. Well, I can tell you they don't. I mean, I deal with it every day, so I can tell you, no, I don't care what anybody puts on social media. Everybody's got one problem or another, right? Mm-hmm. Some are more major than others, yes. Some are genuine, some are not. But everybody's got something, okay? And so this thing of comparison, that's what social media has pushed. You've got to look a certain way, or you've got to talk a certain way, or you've got to perform at a certain level. And that puts unnecessary pressure on the kids. Before, we didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That pressure just wasn't there, but now it is,
Now, what are some tips? We got some parents that are listening to this show today, and they say, oh my gosh, yes, that's my son, that's my daughter. They work hard every single day. They're involved in these activities. They're working hard here and there. How could you say, perhaps give some tips or some wisdom to some folks that are out there listening today to help them provide some tips on self-care for their kids? So for an example, my son, he's one of those kids, man. He's always going. What could you tell me so I could pass on to my son Colton to help him with self-care, so he can take care of himself as he's going through all these, practices and getting up early and schoolwork. And I mean, like I said, they get up at 6 and they're in bed at like 11. I mean, it just doesn't stop. And it's an endless, working schedule that these kids have.
I'm going to come back to my faith first before I go into self-care. So and this is an important thing, I think, to anybody, whether you're a child, adult, because I've had adults with the same issues, can be successful in their job, right? I've had vice presidents of companies and so forth. And what I have to remind them is who they are in God and whose they are. And I think that's so important. When you understand that you're a child of God, that you're royalty, that, there is no greater position in the world than being a child of God. I think once we drill that and we really understand that our identity is wrapped up in Christ, that's the number one thing. That's the first thing I would say to any parent, anyone, adult, child, whatever. Practicals on self-care. I talk about this a lot. Take at least 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes is not a lot. You got 24 hours. Nobody has a gun to your head for the majority of the time, right? So take 30 minutes of your day and do something for you. It's so important. It's amazing when you know that you've got that scheduled, how your life can change, and so take that 30 minutes. That's a practical thing, okay? And schedule in. And if someone says, hey, I need you to, no, sorry, I've got a meeting for 30 minutes. Now, people don't need to know that the meeting for the child is their self-care, but you just got to, if you've got to make it for them, then you schedule that in. The second thing is, I would say, and this is a big one, and they're actually teaching this to the SEALs when they come back. I did this in the FBI Academy when they taught us resiliency. The number one thing they say is gratefulness. Teach your kids gratefulness. Truly be grateful for the things that you have. And I know that sounds like every parent, but the reality is, like right now, I'm sitting on a chair. Well, how grateful am I for this chair? The fact that I've got a chair to sit on. How grateful am I that I have a device that actually can talk to you without having to be right there on location? There are so many things to be grateful for. And with children, they tend to look at what they don't have instead of what they do have. Mm-hmm. So you have to remind them of that. Listen, we are truly blessed. In fact, and this is a statistic I like to remind people, if you live on Social Security in the United States, you're still in the top 5% of the world as far as income, even if you're on Social Security. Wow. And people don't realize 95% of the world wants to live here. The grass is greener. Even on Social Security, you're better off. So it's just reminding our kids, listen, whether you have money or don't have money, whatever, what you do have is valuable. And whose you are is valuable. And what you have to offer is valuable. And constantly reminding them of that listen, you have untapped potential, and who you are is worth fighting for. And you have to be your own biggest advocate. And just really take that time and teach them gratefulness and self-care. That's really, really important.
Yes, sir. And like you said, this has nothing to do with money or social status. This has no bearing on why and when these children or adults decide to end their life because they feel as if they can't continue. They have nothing more to offer. That's alarming. You can live in a double wide trailer and have nothing, or you can live in a $5 million house and have it all. And those two people are going to have the same thoughts in their head. And that right there is, that's reaching, that's reaching them and finding out why, what's the cause, what's the root here, like you say, family breakups, divorce. We've got so much divorce going on in this country. We've got, mental health crisis with COVID, the fear and the anxieties of getting sick and wearing a mask. And we've got, kids that were, left inside a house for 1.5 to 2 years while trying to figure out what was going on in our country as we're battling through some very, unprecedented times. So, I mean, obviously I could see how it could be a major problem. Not only here in Montgomery County, but in the country as suicide increases by the day. Now,
can I just add to that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Another big tip, and I know all parents are guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. We want to tell our kids what they should think, how they should think, what they should do. And what I've learned from all my years in chaplaincy and dealing with crisis and doing what I do, learn to listen. It doesn't mean you're not going to give them that advice in the end, but don't give it to them straight away. You don't need to have blah, 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 this is what you need. I think one of the key things as a parent is, all right, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling without getting upset about, without judging. Tell me why you feel the way you feel, right? What makes you think that way? And don't try and fix it. Just allow your child or even your spouse or your friend or whoever it may be. We like to say we get them to verbally throw up on us. In other words, whatever the pain is inside, you want them to talk about it. They're not looking for you to fix it right there and then. They're just looking for somebody who's taking the time to get it out of their system. And so if we drank poison, what would they do? They'd pump our stomach. So when something is painful or causing our child or, our friend to hurt, just listen. And once they've had the opportunity and you feel like they've been able to talk about it, they've really, been able to share what they've got, then you can come in and say, hey, well, these are some of the things that you can look forward to. This is what you do in this situation. But just taking that extra time to listen can make all the world of difference to the child or to whoever it is that is struggling.
Listening, and you know, as children, adults, or whoever may be in that crisis type moment, they are unloading things on you, Bruce. They are unloading everything, and you're taking this all in, and you are there as a man of God, as a man of faith, and you are counseling them, if you will, on a very bad day or a bad topic or what's on their mind that is causing them distress. Now, that has got to be exhausting for you. Now, how do you remain grounded and mentally stable after dealing with the worst of situations that one could deal with?
Okay. So I start my day in prayer and in the Word. I finish my day in prayer and in the Word. It's that whole adage: you can't pour out if you're not filled up. So I make sure I do that. I make sure I take time for self-care. I make sure I spend quality time with my wife and with my children, because that is huge for me. And then I'm blessed to have people around me like Lana Snell and Ken Schlenkler and others that I can debrief with, who go through exactly the same thing that I do. Mm-hmm. And my old sergeant at HPD, Houston Police, Lorena Reese, we call each other and we say, hey, this is what's going on. This is the kind of day I've had, and we can debrief with each other, because we all understand, the job and what it entails. And so I do that, and again, this task force that we started with Eric Seacrest and Sean Simmons and others has been huge, because it's a place for us to be honest, to be open, to train together, to learn together. Another friend of ours, Joe Collins, amazing guy. We're truly blessed that I put people in place that I can talk to. And that is really important. You can't take all this on. You're not supposed to carry that burden by yourself. And of course, I have my church family, that I can share with, and close friends. And so, I'm truly blessed. And you obviously know Chris Sadler from Honor Cafe, and so he's been a great support for me. And so I'm blessed to be around people that love the Lord, love me, and can hear the things that I've got to say. And obviously I don't share names, but just the experiences, and just it allows me to unload, and because I know the importance of it. I have to do that.
Bruce, you are heavily involved in the community. Like I said in the intro, you exhaust me. You are everywhere. What's it like? Describe the feeling that you get in serving the community.
I absolutely love it. I mean, I've said this many times. You could give me all the money in the world, and of course, everything I do is volunteer. So I don't get paid a cent for anything I do. I'm blessed. My wife is a drilling engineer, so we do okay. So that also frees me, because I'm not driven by money. I'm able to do what I want to do, which is help people. And so that's a great feeling to be able to do that. We give you an example. We had a child, and this may be a little bit traumatic for some people to hear, but we had a 12-year-old that was raped by her next door neighbor. And we were able to point her in the direction of counseling, get that paid for. And I got a letter from the mother and the child who thought our life was over. We didn't know what we were going to do, and we got them into equine therapy. And now this girl, that's what she wants to do. I mean, there's a real satisfaction that comes from knowing you were able to help that person.
Yeah.
There's a real satisfaction when you see a veteran who was maybe suicidal. Like I've got a friend who had tried to hang himself, and I showed up at the apartment, and luckily the belt broke, and now he's looking at starting his own business. I mean, it's very satisfying when you see people move forward. It's satisfying helping other people that I know, like, Craig Sawyer, where he was with SEAL Team 6, and he does Veterans for Child Rescue. And I've been able to help him get connected with the law enforcement here in Montgomery County. and just seeing what he does to rescue kids from human trafficking and from child predators, and that's obviously very satisfying, because you don't want these creeps on the street, and so you just being able to help and help out, like I said, our local people. It's very, very satisfying. It's very rewarding in its own way.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of great friends like you, so I'm there's nothing better than that. To me, everything comes down to relationships.
You were one of the first people I met here when I moved here in 2020 at Honor Cafe.
Yeah. My favorite place to eat. I think people think I live there.
Oh yeah, I'm always right. That's where we hang out.
Yeah, exactly. So if you haven't been there, go to Honor Cafe in Conroe. Free plug.
So, the work you do is very rewarding, to see it work, to see that the work that you're doing in the community is making a difference. And it makes you feel good to know that you are a part of something that's far, far greater and far bigger than you, and far greater than the actual purpose that you're actually serving out there to help others, to help them live the life that they were intended to live. Now, it's also very stressful, again, because you're dealing with some of the people that are having the worst day of their life. Now, do you have a proud moment that stands out to you in your professional career that you will say, yep, that was my most proudest moment of my career as a professional?
That's a really tough question, isn't it? I don't think, and I'll say it this way: I don't think there's one standout moment, and I'll explain why. Every person matters to me, right? I mean, every person matters. So to say, one life was saved or was worth more than another, I don't kind of think that is fair. But I do think, I think the story that I shared, I think that's the one that impacts me the most, because I think that's somebody who wasn't able to help themselves. You're talking about a child. And so being able to be there for them and get them through it, in a way that I've never actually, in all honesty, I've never actually met the person. I was able to help him in a different way. So, and I'll just leave it at that. But that I think for me, because again, it's a 12-year-old. You're talking about a kid that, my daughter's 12, so I think that's the one that hits home probably the most.
Predators preying on our most vulnerable. That right there in its own right is sickening, and it's downright frightening. And it takes men like you and our sheriff's office and our constables to keep us safe, to keep our families, our children, and our citizens, safe, because there is a lot of evil out there. Like you say, you see it every day. And that's going to lead me into my next question. Now, you're a first responder for behavioral health and are on the suicide task force. How many calls would you say that you go on a week and actually intervene in these types of moments of crisis?
It depends. Obviously, holiday season, we get a lot more calls. So for example, and not all of them come through the constable's office. In fact, a lot will just come through people, like I said, who know what I do. So I got a call Saturday night for a veteran. I got a call Sunday night from a veteran. What's today? Tuesday. So I didn't get a call yesterday. Then I got told by my lieutenant about another situation that I obviously can't share, but that I have to deal with this afternoon after I get off with this. So, holiday season tends to be a little bit busier than normal. I remember last year we had, I think, 9 suicides in 2 weeks. So it depends on the season.
Why are the holiday seasons always a recipe for suicide?
Because it reminds them of everything that they do or don't have. So if your parents are divorced, for example, then for a child, the Christmas isn't the same anymore. I don't have my parents there. If you're an adult, you may have got divorced, and so then, all right, well, what am I doing? I'm by myself. What's it all worth for? And it's just a reminder. And then people lose parents. Like parents have died, and so their grief can be overwhelming. And so it's a reminder of all those things. And of course, then you have the society pressures of, well, I've got to buy presents for Christmas and I've got to buy this, and right now I can't even pay my rent. How am I going to do this? I can't even survive right now, let alone provide a gift for my child. And so all those pressures, financial pressure is obviously a big one. And so, all of those things add up. That's why our new series that we're doing on YouTube, which is free for anybody to watch through Reflective Life Media, called Breaking Strongholds, is so important because it's offering hope to families. So it talks about this very topic of suicide, and the importance of seeking Jesus in all of this. And so, I'd encourage people to watch that. We have a study guide that comes with it. And so around the holidays is a really good time to watch it because it kind of provides hope when sometimes things can be really tough. I'm blessed. I'm in a really unusual situation. I get along with all my family. So my family and my wife's family, we all get along great. And I know that's not normal. I know that's not but I'm fortunate. But for a lot of families, obviously, this is a really stressful time. And so not all families get along, not all families, and who's going to get the kids this year? You had them last year and all that kind of thing. So, it's a very stressful time. So, that's part of it.
You mentioned Breaking Strongholds. I was at the very first premiere at Honor Cafe, and that was a very good show. I think I've seen 2 of them now, and that's based here, I believe, in Montgomery County. And again, you're a part of it, so it's very awesome, man. It's very unique, and the program I know and the show is saving lives. I have heard that.
Yeah. So we filmed it all here in Montgomery County. We've done 4 episodes already, and we're calling that season 1. And then season 2, we're in the process of filming right now. Carla McDougall is our executive director, producer. It's her baby, and then of course Robin Murray and is our writer, and Jake Allen pretty much does everything. Jake is the camera guy, the editing guy, the director on scene. I mean, Jake does everything too. So, and then of course we have Ulysses in it, and Terry Weaver, who's our star in the show, and Ulysses obviously from Eden Cafe here in Montgomery County. So yeah, we've got amazing people, who everybody's volunteering. And we're doing it because we know it does impact people. We saw what the movie did and how many people that impacted. It's had 8 million views, I think, on Amazon Prime and PureFlix. So we know this is going to affect a lot of people. YouTube is, for you and I, it wasn't, my choice of watching episodes was TV, but for today, YouTube is what all kids, all adults, pretty much everybody's on YouTube now. And so we thought that's the best way to reach as many people that we can with the message of hope and shining light in darkness. As Judge Mack, if you've ever heard Judge Mack speak, he talks about that all the time. He helped start the Taskforce for Montgomery County. We want to shine a light on this subject. And so we see ourselves as media missionaries, that we are using our films and our streaming episodes to actually reach the world with the message of Jesus and the gospel and hope. So
great. Preventing suicide. And not only here in Montgomery County and in Texas, but in the country and really the world at that. This is a humanitarian type issue there in just saving lives. Now, I want to end on this note. What type of life advice or words of wisdom can you give the people out there who are listening that are going through that grieving period, who are feeling hopeless and are feeling helpless and that are going through a season of anxiety and depression? What can Bruce say to these folks out there today that may cheer them up a little bit, to give them some just a symbol of strength, or perhaps feed them some good words of encouragement?
Yeah, absolutely. Often when we're in these situations, we feel like we're the only ones that have ever been through it. Nobody understands how we feel. Only I have experienced this. But when you really, and I do this every day, when you really get out there, there are many, many people who are going through and have gone through exactly what you've gone through and have pulled through. And they see the other side, and there is hope. There is a future. You do not want to solve a temporary problem with a permanent solution. And so I would tell you, getting plugged in to your local church, reading your word, praying, there are people there that care for you, that genuinely will love you in an honest, authentic way, who aren't going to judge you. And so I would encourage you to reach out to your friends, to your neighbors, to whoever it is that you feel comfortable talking to, and just let them know what you're going through. You don't have to do anything alone. Our cast and crew is available. There are many people that are available that want to be there for people. We just need you to reach out, and you can do that in a variety of ways. You can even comment on our Facebook page for Breaking Strongholds, or on YouTube, or there are many different ways that you can reach out. If you're a veteran, you can go to Warrior's Journey and you can type in there, and they'll get somebody in contact with you almost immediately. So there are many ways to do that. And I would just say, listen, God created you because he thought you were worth creating. I mean, there are 4 billion people, and he needed you. So that just tells you you're special. Nobody can be the best version of you other than you. And so I would encourage you to know that who your maker is. You're created perfectly and wonderfully, and God doesn't make mistakes, and so therefore you're not a mistake. You are here because he loves you, and he has a plan and purpose for you. And that's a promise, and he doesn't break his promises. He'd never broken his word. And I can tell you, he would fight for you. And just from personal experience, God's never lost. He's never lost a fight. So if he's fighting for you, you're good. You just got to trust in him.
Absolutely. Once you lay it all out there and you accept him as your Lord and Savior, things will begin to change. And,
absolutely,
it was very godly thing of you to say, is to be available. There's a lot of people out there that are living the life of the hustle and bustle, and they don't have time for a lot of things and a lot of people, as everybody out there is living an overwhelming life, and being available is the key here, is making yourself available to those in need, because you never know. That could be the call that could ultimately save their life, or a call and opportunity missed. So Bruce,
can I just say, I would challenge people, whatever you're doing, whatever your priorities. So say it's your kid's baseball game, it's a work schedule, you've got to finish a project by a certain time. I would just ask you this: is it worth somebody's life?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is that one event, or that one project, or that one thing more important than a person's life, whether they live or die? And of course, most of us would say no, it's not more important than that person's life. And so when you get a call and someone is reaching out, be available.
Right. That's very true. That's very true. But Bruce, you are a tremendous champion, and you are a symbol of hope and strength for so many out there. And I would just like to thank you for joining us today on this program.
It really was a pleasure. I love you, brother. I appreciate you having me on, and and continue to do the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the community to be an effective and positive voice of change. Your service, sacrifice, and